tracks. It's really an honor to have you here today. And we did read a little bit about the Scattercook Nation and a little bit about you. So we welcome you. This is my co-host, Rick Hunt.
Welcome.
And just so you can say hi to Carolyn, who's working the board.
Hello.
There she is. And here we are. It's a team effort here. So we're really happy to be here with you today. Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit more about you and some of the work that you've been working on lately?
Sure. First, I want to say thanks for having me again. I'm excited to be here and talk with you guys about sustainability and food and the forests. And so yeah, with that, my name is Hushanan Kasik, or in loosely translated English, HawkStorm. Really, in our language, it's like a hurricane of falcons. But this is how I've ended up bastardizing it a little bit by saying that. So anyway, I'm Scattercook, or as my grandfather would say, Wampanoag, which is Eastern. I'm also Yawa Masharawa from my wife's people, the Yawanao peoples of Brazil. And I guess one of the things that we really like to focus on is bringing our foods back to our forests and getting people to realize that we need to eat and drink from our environments if we're going to adapt to our environments and live in right relationship with the land that we're on. Mm-hmm. And also to combat a lot of these sicknesses that are happening with us due to displacement and moving around our Earth Mother, but not giving our bodies a chance to adapt to the environments that we're now in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love some of the projects that you're working on. One, of course, the land that was purchased back in 2019, and you're planting things that will really bring forth fruit into the future for the next generations, and that must feel so good. And and also that the tribe is participating in that and doing that action together. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so our land is all forested, but we're looking at the resilience of our Earth Mother, right? So in the Northeast, our forests suffered from deforestation a long time ago with the charcoal industry, with building New York City or other cities, extensive sheep farming, and all these things really devastated our environment. And we're basically looking at the resiliency of our Earth Mother. Unfortunately, many of the seeds that used to be in our environments are no longer there. Mm-hmm. And so we have a responsibility to bring these seeds back. And so one of the things that we've been doing, I mean, this is a huge thing, right, is bringing these nuts, berries, and fruits and medicines back into our forests. So even though, people come from all over the world to come and visit the Northeast and see the beautiful maple trees in the fall and how beautiful it is in the spring and all the lovely colors, we're not seeing the biodiversity that has been here for thousands of years. And so that actually makes our forest very susceptible to climatic shifts. When you have a diverse ecosystem, it can balance itself, and it can actually fight off mass die-offs of plant species and stuff like that. The thing that we emphasize, though, within this is that we want to bring the foods back as well. So when we're thinking about re-diversifying or re-indigenizing our ecosystems, are we thinking about the foods as well? Are we thinking, let's just plant 1,000 trees or 1,000,000 trees and have the same issue that, we have out west, where it's, the vast majority is pine due to industry. And so when we have a forest fire, they all go up in smoke. And there isn't that barrier of resistance that you would get from a biodiverse ecosystem. And so, and in doing that, we're also thinking, like I said, about food. So we have to remember that we're part of the environment, that we are animals, and that our relatives need food too. And so imagine the bears and all the squirrels and the chipmunks and all these animals that are living off of one or two nut species, getting ready for winter. We have these things growing at certain periods during the year to benefit us and the animals to be able to survive into the next season. So in the nut season, as we know, going into fall and winter, we need these nuts and this a variety of nuts to get the fats and the nutrition that we need to survive through the next season. And so thinking along those lines, what grows in our environments in each season that help us get through that season, and not just us, obviously, with all of our relatives, right? And so how do we live in reciprocity and work with our environments together, and stop thinking so egocentric and that it's only about us, because it's not. And even doing that, even when we're thinking about only us, we're really hurting ourselves, because we're not even doing what is beneficial for ourselves to survive in these environments. And so these are the things that we really are focused on. And it's been nice to see a lot of the younger tribal members getting their hands dirty and getting involved in planting and learning about this. And also to work with our neighboring communities that are realizing how important this work is. So over the last few years, we've only had the land for a couple of years, and we've already planted over 3,000 trees in a forest, and thousands of ramps. We did a giant ramp patch. We have we're planting ginseng everywhere. That's coming up beautifully. We were just out there checking on that coming up. We had an awesome ramp harvest this year, and we're seeing a lot of baby ramps coming in. So, a lot of female ramps have taken over, which is so amazing. And then teaching how to safely harvest these things without destroying what we help to bring back.
As you were talking, I'm reminded of these things that are happening with the climate right now. There's a huge fires in Nova Scotia that, our weather alert today is we're going to see smoke from these fires. And, I think about some of the cleansing that happens with controlled burns and things like that. But when it's out of control and it's a wildfire, so much can be destroyed for the habitats of the humans and the animals. So, we're living in this time right now that these big changes are happening, and we can witness it, we can ignore it, or we can, choose to, be positive and see what we can do to change things in the future.
Yeah, I like to say, once you understand the problem, once you know what the problem is, it's up to us to really assess what our our responsibility is. What is our ability to respond? Not everybody can respond in the same way, but there are things that we can do together that can benefit each other who are doing these things, this work, whether it's people that are in the tech industry, right? That are like, we work with a lot of engineering students, and really trying to help indigenize their perspective on where they're going with technology and water treatment systems and buildings, right? Even green building, and what materials we're using, how sustainable are these systems that we're using, and what technologies are out there that we can use to work together and benefit each other to do this work. And so it's going to take all of us. I've done a lot of work with Drawdown over the years, and for those who don't know what Drawdown is, it's like it was a project that came out a few years back, where a bunch of scientists from around the world did studies on the top 100 ways of, and just because it says it's the top 100 ways doesn't make it the top 100 ways, but it is a good study on 100 ways of not only combating climate change, but reversing our carbon footprint. And it's all these different ideas coming from all these different perspectives, and how we kind of have to bring these ideas together to the table, so that we're all sitting at the same table and seeing how we can work together to achieve these goals. And so it's been pretty interesting working with these different mindsets, and how we can figure out ways of working together. So
yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. What are you thinking, Rick?
I'm taking this all in, and I'm reminded of Doug and Shirley's efforts in Vermont with the Abenaki garden and all the traditional plants that they're growing and saving
seed and
seed savers.
Yeah. Really interesting little story, because I don't know if you know, but there was corn that is grown in the Northeast. It only grows about 3 feet tall, and really tiny ears of corn, because of the short growing season. It was grown by the Abenaki for over 350 years, given to settlers in the area who continued to grow it. And the seed was given back to the Abenaki, when recognition happened in 2010. And this is the garden, the Kalasakakoas garden, that they continue to grow the seed and save the seed. And it's a beautiful kind of thing, because it has this story behind it. And it's corn from here, from Vermont. And so it's really a wonderful endeavor that they continue to grow this kind of corn. You also, I love how you encourage us to envision new thinking and new models for surviving and working together and living together, for all life on the planet. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the projects that you're in partnership with or in collaboration with?
Yeah. So we did a semester 2 years ago with the Columbia University students. Studio Teca, the teacher is Vanessa Keith, and she wrote the book 2100, A Utopian Dystopia, which is a future-centric. What are we looking forward to with a climactic shift of 2 to 4 degrees, and what's going to happen with our cities, what's going to happen with how we're living in on this planet, right? And so we did work with them a couple years ago for the work that we're doing in New York, and we did studies from 50 years ago to 50 years in the future, what we have to look forward to with temperature shifts, where's the water going, where are we even did migratory patterns of birds. We did, how can we bring more animals back? How can we help balance the ecosystem? What happens if we do add these foods to the forest? We talked about checkerboarding of the roads and how it's really disturbed animal migration patterns. And then we worked with the students on creating climate machines and how and ways of repairing the damage that we've done, and some of the work that we have on our website and under the Schaghticoke Land Reclamation Project and collaboration with Columbia University and last year we did the same thing for Brazil. And so as some of you may know, my wife is Nawashiru Sara Yawanela from the Yawanel peoples of Brazil in Acre, and we're doing a very similar project in the rainforest. And so we have a village, Aldeia Chukuvana, which is on the Rio Gregorio in the territory of the Yawanel peoples. And we are working towards doing an agro-food forestry project there, which is interesting because we're literally in the rainforest, but some of the territory that was demarcated in 1984 or given back to the Yawanel in 1984 was down to at that point only 2 villages. And now they're back to having 12 villages and bring their people back. And we have the village Aldeia Chukuvana where we're doing this type of work. But there's other villages doing this similar work, and it's very important to also teach about how we're doing it. And but at that time, a lot of the land that we were given back was actually used by farmers. And so we have to repair some of the damage that was done at that point. And so working with mycelium and bringing the plants in and bringing the mycelium from the forest back into the areas where we're planting to kind of remind and reconnect our foods to our mother, instead of growing in isolation. That's another thing, like mycelium is extremely important to growing food as well. It's that interconnectedness, the interweb of the earth, and it's how nutrients are brought to the plants. So imagine if you have a tomato plant, right, or some kind of plant that's literally trying to suck up any nutrients it can just from where its roots can be, as opposed to a mycelial network that connects all the plants, that's bringing in nutrients from all over to make sure that the plant gets exactly what it needs. So our foods are actually benefiting from using a mycelial network to grow, rather than just what it can take out of that soil that's directly underneath it, which is not how root systems are really meant to work. They're actually meant to work as like a symbiotic relationship with the Earth Mother through that mycelial network. And each plant requires different things. And so, we know about the 3 sisters, planting the 3 sisters together and how they work together, right? And because if you're just growing corn, you're going to deplenish the soil from its nutrients. But if you're adding the beans and the squash, it works together to balance that out. And so the soil stays very healthy and brings that nutrients in. and then you add that mycelial layer, and now you're working with the trees, the other plants from all over to make sure that all the plants and foods get the nutrients that they need.
Mm. Yeah, that's really important. And it's also a reminder of how we can also do that as human beings, to, working together, creating unity, and how that, makes heavy work lighter when we all come together to do that in a good way. So I wanted to make sure that we also talk about the work that you do as far as human rights advocacy, and we mentioned this collective responsibility of human beings. I think that also kind of bleeds over into our collective responsibility to each other. And would you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So we've been an Indigenous delegate to the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues since 2012, and very big advocates for the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But if you take the time to really read the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, having Indigenous peoples have these collective rights is also like protecting everyone and protecting the environment and making sure that there is an Indigenous voice in all aspects of what we do on this planet. And it's extremely important. If you look at our world's biodiversity, and it's not just about this, but if you look at our world's biodiversity, there's 80% of the world's biodiversity is protected by 3% of the world population, which is Indigenous peoples. And so if that's the case, and we're dealing with a major problem down in Brazil, right? Like Bolsonaro was in charge for all this time and doing this extreme deforestation and mining and destroying our rainforests. And we did a study over the last from 2010 to 2020, just seeing the devastation of the rainforest is astronomical. But then going from the time that Bolsonaro was in, we don't even have the proper studies for that yet. And he's a strong advocate for destroying and farming and bringing in the miners. And so now we're dealing with the aftermath of that, having Lula back in office. But right now, they're trying to pass a law which takes away all demarcated lands. For those who don't know, demarcated lands are lands that are Indigenous territories and protected by the Indigenous, and they're trying to take that away so that it can be explored for farming and mining. And that's going to be extremely devastating for not just the Amazon, but for the entire world. And we need to protect that. We need to understand that we're not living in a bubble, right? We're not, like, our ecosystem that we surround ourselves with on a daily basis is not the world, but anything that we do in that ecosystem affects everyone else in the world and everything else in the world. So we're not living in a bubble. Rather, though we like to isolate, and we're programmed to be isolationists and separatists, and that all that matters is right in front of us. That's not the case. And we need to really understand that being part of this world cannot be a nationalist idealism. It can't be. We can't think that if we only care about the United States, that we're going to be okay if we're taking the oil from someplace else or we're helping to destroy another part of the world. That's not how we're going to survive. We're definitely won't.
Sachem, HawkStorm, do you have children working alongside of you doing this kind of work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Wonderful.
mean, us alone, you know, in my family alone, we have six that that we're helping to hopefully inspire to be better land stewards and stewards of life. And in our village, all the kids in the village, they are getting involved with planting, and they get
Oh,
involved
wow.
with you know, the collecting of the food
Hmm.
and understanding how important that cycle is.
That's fantastic. Really
Yeah,
is.
it's definitely inspiring for me to see it, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and to see, you know, people just wanting to get involved, even if they don't understand the whole dynamic of it, but just understanding how important clean food is, you know,
Mhm.
how important it is to know how to grow your own food, how to not just think like, you know, in like think outside the box. We're like forest farming is like totally different, right?
Mhm.
You know, forage farming, right? And understanding that, you know, it's okay to get your food out of the forest. You know, it's okay to learn what is edible out there because not everything should come from a supermarket. You know, what if the
Mhm.
supermarket closes? What if the farmer dies? What's going to happen? You know,
Mhm.
what if all the floods come and all our farms that are growing in the floodplains can't produce food anymore?
Mhm.
You know, are we preparing for, you know, the eventuality of a climactic shift? I mean, where, right now, could we go into our forest, our local forests, and be able to get enough food for not only us, but for our animal relatives as well?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Hmm.
I I was looking at your website, and I really was I, I think got me thinking about things when you try to think of the past and the present and the future all at one time, and bringing these things together and intersecting, remembering the past, being here in the present, but like trying to prepare for the future. And I think that what you are telling us today is very much an indigenous worldview. And so I just wanted to ask you if maybe we could talk a little bit more about that, like bringing all that together.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've done extensive like research on the on our history, you know, and on the history of indigenous here and on the history of you know, this country, and also read journals from our people were uh, um, had the Moravians come in, and they were a German sect of religion that came in, and Christianity that came in, and they lived very differently than like the Puritans or the Presbyterians or the Protestants. They came in and actually lived in our village. They didn't create a village and bring us in. And they didn't try to stop us from doing certain customs that we've always done. And so I've gotten to read their journals, and like for instance, in March 4th of 1744 or 43, you know, we go out and we're making our sugar shack in the woods, right? Well, that was around the time that we should be making our sugar shack. Well, this year we made maple syrup in January. And so things are
Mhm.
changing. And in the last couple of years, we, you know, we were making maple syrup in mid-February. So these changes are happening. They're happening in real time. And if we don't understand the past, we don't understand that that change is happening. And how can we prepare for it in the future?
Mm.
You
Mhm.
know, and so we need to remember who we are, where we come from, what our seeds, our songs, our stories, you know, remembering our stories, and you know, remembering the Glooscap stories,
Mhm.
and you know, telling these stories to our children, and then being able to realize the changes that are happening around us, so that we can properly adjust and prepare for them. Because, we might not ever be able to go back to doing things the old way, but we can do things in the future that has that mindset in mind, so we can, like I was talking about earlier with the technologies that we have available to us today. How can we kind of unify that, the indigenous way of thinking, but bring it to a scale where we're also utilizing the technologies that we have available for us today? I don't know if that really helps, like with what you were asking, but I feel like the thing is always remembering who we are, where we come from, in order to understand where we're at today, how we got there, and how we can adjust for an ever-changing future.
Yeah, that's really important. Because my name is Deb Rigger, my co-host is Rick Hunt, and we're talking to Sachem HawkStorm today. It's been a really wonderful conversation. We are on the clock, so we have time for maybe a couple more questions. I didn't know if Rick, if you had a question, or
I don't know if it's a question, but I'd like to say I think it's very important what you're doing with the children. They're going to carry this knowledge ahead and hopefully use it.
Yeah, in a good way. We know that. Is there something that's on your heart that you'd like our listeners to take away from this conversation today, HawkStorm?
Well, there's another aspect of what I do, is I'm very connected to the land, to the ancestors. And when I'm in the woods, I see the land from 500, 1,000, 2,000, 7,000 years ago. And the ancestors have given me the opportunity to read the rock walls, read the wigwam platforms, read the environment and how we lived in reciprocity with our environment for thousands of years, and how, these markers are in place. They've been in place for thousands of years, and they literally teach us how to live in right relationship with the planet. They'll tell us where our water is, where the fresh water is, where the portals are, where the ceremonial areas are, and where there is great area for planting and such. And I think that, instead of thinking about these things from a stance of, this is the past, and that, we should put it in a museum and go and visit it. I think it's teaching us that not only is it still here, but we can learn from it, and we can go back to understanding who we are on this planet and how to read our environment in a very basic way of, living in reciprocity with our Earth Mother. And so I think that, just getting into place and being connected to place and being connected to your environment and eating and drinking from your environment, and if they are poisoning your environment, to fight the ones that are poisoning your environment, so that your children, our next 7 generations, have the opportunity to have clean water, clean air, and food that is not grown in a lab. And if here's this thing, like, right, Monsanto makes these seeds, right? They have their serial number on it. They can find out whether their seeds have pollinated another crop, and then they can literally sue somebody that's growing their seeds, even by accident, if they're not making money off of it. But so if it can go to other crops, if it can pollinate and spread to other crops, why can't it spread to the forest? And what's that mean? Is there going to be a time when our forest can't reproduce seed that's going to grow on its own? Are we going to have to be completely reliant on human intervention to survive on this planet at all. I think some ways our intelligence can be our downfall. And we need to let go of our ego and realize that we're not in control of the world if we want to survive in it, and if we want to be leaving a moccasin trail for our children to follow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you for your words today, and your encouragement to everyone to get back to the land and listen. And,
well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for inviting me on, and I look forward to more.
Okay, absolutely. And
Yes.
enjoy the rest of your day and your family. We send greetings and lots of love for all the projects that you're working on. It's really an inspiration. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. And I say, Oniwe Ane Nikich Achwechted, I'm grateful to you, my relatives.
Oh, thank you. Okay. We look forward to another visit sometime in the future. Thank you.